ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां
सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्।
ॐ सहनाववतु
सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह
वीर्यं
वीर्यं
करवावहै
करवावहै
तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु
तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्तिः।
So please tell me if everything is clear, because the machine laptop is different, so I'm not too sure. Is the video clear? Is audio clear?
Yes, Acharya.
Yes, Acharya.
All right. So now we are going on Karika number 3. So remember, this is chapter 2, Vaitadhya Prakaranam. So we will chant Karika number 3. Abhavascharathadinam
अभावश्चरथादीनां
Ruyate Nyayapurvakam
श्रूयते न्यायपूर्वकम्
Vaithatyam Tena Vai Praptam
वैतेन वै प्राप्तम्
Swapna Ahuh Prakashitam.
स्वप्नाभाप्रकाशितम्।
Okay, so just muting you all. All right. So we saw that we're talking about the non-reality, the mithyatvam of dreams. And we have seen the logical support and the support, the perception support. So yukti and pratyaksha pramanam we saw. And here also we saw the shastra pramanam in the last verse. Now here more shastra pramanam is being given. So he says, and he's talking about the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. There is a Brahmanam there is a chapter, Brahmanam, called Swayam Jyoti Brahmanam. And that chapter analyzes the 3 states, the 2 states, waking and dreaming. That is the Jagrata and Swapna Avastha, it analyzes. And therefore he says, Nyaya Purvakam. Purvakam means before, Nyaya is logic. So Nyaya Purvakam, logically we have seen earlier the Mithyatma of the dream of Swapna Avastha. We have seen that it is a mithya only, and that proof was given logically, Nyaya Purvakam. And he says Shruyate. Shruyate means it is heard in the Shruti. Shruti also says. So here it is, the reference is Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And Abhavascha Rathadhinam. So Rathadhinam Abhavaha. Ratha Adi Abhavaha. So Ratha means chariot. Abhava means absence of chariot. So there is a Shruti Vakyam from the Radharanyaka Upanishad. It is the 4th chapter, the 3rd Brahmana. So it talks about, in Swapna Avastha it says, and I'll quote for you, Na tatra ratha. Tatra means in that avastha, in that Swapna Avastha, na ratha. Chariots are not there. And Ratha Yoga. So the word Ratha Yoga is a very, beautiful little word. We know, right? The meaning of the word yoga is to join with. So Ratha Yoga means joined with the chariot. What is joined with the chariot?
The senses, the
The
5
horses.
senses.
Right. And therefore Ratha Yoga means horses. A very nice derivation. So, na tatra ratha, in that dream avastha, there is no chariot. Na ratha yoga, there is no horse also. And na panthanaha, there is no path also for the chariot to travel up, right? All these are created where? In our mind, in the dream. And even though we experience them in the dream, when the chariot is there and we are riding on the chariot, we experience the chariot, we experience the horses, and we experience the path on which the chariot goes. So Ratha Yoga, and Pantha, all three are there. But Gaudapada says that in that Swapna Avastha, Abhavanti, none of these are really there at all. And therefore, it's a very important Vedantic law which is being enunciated, or our attention is being drawn to that law. What is that law? What you experience need not be real, right? And what is the most common experience which we have, which we know is not real?
Rising and
Are
setting
we
of the
talking about
sun.
sunset, sunrise, sunset?
It can be sunrise also, because you see, experience the sun rising, but you know that
Dream.
the sun doesn't really rise, right? So the experience does not correspond to the reality. And here, of course, he's talking about the Swapna Avastha, all the objects which you experience in your dream, they are also not real. So he says, Vaithatyam vai praptam swapnaha. The swapna, swapna praptam means whatever is, whatever objects are there in your swapna, indeed, Vaithatyam, they indeed are mithya. And how do you know? Because logically also you have seen that whatever is there in Swapna Avastha is really mithya only. And here he says, Tena ahuhu prakashitam. Shruti also is talking about the same thing. Shruti is restating that the dream world is mithya only. Right? So this is the idea that Shruti states that the dream world is mithya only. So if you want the word meanings, you can look at abhavascha, in the absence rathadinam of chariot, etc. Nyaya Purvakam, we have already seen that the objects of the dream are mithya. But Shruyate, we hear it in the Shruti also. And Tena Vai Ahuhu, that Shruti therefore says, Swapna Praptam Prakashitam, whatever is there in the Swapna Avastha is also Vaithatyam, is also Mithya only. Right? So, in the absence of the chariot, etc., along with the supporting logic we have seen, therefore, you can say that both logically and in terms of Shruti also, the dream avastha is mithya only. So, that is what is being said. And we will talk more about it. So, we will look at the Karika number 4. Please unmute yourself. We will chant. Antasthanuttu bhedanam
Antasthanatu bhedanam
tasmad jagarite smritam
tasmad jagarite smritam
yatha tatra tatha swapne
यथा तथा
yatha
तथा
tatra
स्वप्ने
swapne
tamritattvena vidyate.
संवृत्तेन
samvrittena
विद्यते
bhidyate.
So, he's again stating, I'll first explain briefly the words and then we'll go on. So, yatha swapne, just as in the swapna avastha, tatha tatra. Similarly, in the case of jagrata avastha, what is seen? Vedanam jagrite Vedana, the differences, which means the mithyatvam of the objects, Jagrite, in the waking state, Smrutam, is accepted. Therefore, therefore, Vidyate antasthanat samvrittatvena. Therefore, the dream differs. The reason is being given. The dream differs from the Jagrata Avastha. Why? Antasthanat samvrittatvena. Because in the dream avastha, there is a limitation of space in the body. So we have already said this earlier. Okay. We are just explaining it in detail. So in these, we have already seen Gaudapada stating that the dream avastha, the dream world is mithya only. And now, in the next few karikas, the next 10 or the next 12 or 13 karikas, we are going to establish that just as the dream state is mithya, the Jagra state is also mithya. Just as the dream world is mithya, the Jagrat world, where you are awake, that world is also mithya. That is what is going to be established. Now, here we have to note something very carefully. When I say the dream world is mithya, am I saying it from the standpoint of the dreamer or the waker?
Waker.
Always it is the waker. The dreamer can never say the dream is mithya, right? This understanding of which is the perspective from which I am saying that something is mithya, that is very, very important to understand the rest of these karikas. So whenever you say my dream world is mithya, you are saying it from the standpoint of the Vishwa, the waker, not from the standpoint of Taijasa, the dreamer. Because whatever happens in the dream is very real for the dreamer, right? If the dreamer is hit in his dream by a dream car, his dream body will certainly get hurt. He will be taken to the dream ICU. The dream doctor will treat him and he'll pay the doctor dream money, right? This is from the point of view of the dreamer, there is nothing unreal about the dream. And if we learn to appreciate these statements from the appropriate standpoint, then only we will be able to assimilate the teaching fully. So, from the standpoint of the dream body, the dream world and all its events are very, very real. But what is the essence, the truth of the dreamer? If I have to ask you, what is the essence behind the dreamer? What would you say?
The waker.
It is the waker. And therefore, from the waker standpoint, who is the waker is basically the truth of the dreamer. The Atma of the dreamer, so to say, is the waker. And from that waker's point, the dream world is mithya. Okay, now you have to apply this whole logic to the Jagrada Avastha. From the standpoint of the waker's body, the Jagrat universe, the Jagrat Avastha is very, very real. But from the standpoint of the essence of the waker, which is what?
Brahman.
Brahman or Atma.
Which is Atma, or in terms of this particular discussion we are having, Turiam, right? Brahman is called Turiam over here, Turya Chaitanyam. So from the standpoint of Brahman or Turiam, Remember, the Jagrat Prapancha, the waking universe, is also mithya. And therefore, it says, Yatha Swapne Tatra Tatha. Just as the world is mithya in the dream, from the waker's standpoint, Tatra Tatha. Similarly, from the standpoint of Atma, the waking world is also mithya. As it does Tasmat Jagirite Vedanam Smritam. Therefore, the mithyatvam of the Jagradavastha is also accepted. Vedanam here is to be taken as the mithyatvam, the duality. Therefore, the duality, the mithyatvam of the Jagradavastha plus all its objects is also accepted. Okay, now a question will come up. You are saying that Jagradavastha is mithya. That is to say, Jagrat universe is mithya. The dream universe, Swapna universe is also mithya. Both Jagrat and Swapna Prapancha are both mithya. Is there any difference at all between the two? So the Acharya says yes. Antasthanat samrittatvena vidyate. These two vidyate, they are different. Why? Antasthanat samrittatvena. The limitations of space inside the body. Antasthanat, inside the body. Samritatvena, the limitation, the boundaries of. Dream is different from Jagradavastha because within the body, which is the framework for the dream state, there is a limitation of space. But in Jagradavastha, there is sufficient time and space. Okay. Now again, you can have a question. I can appreciate that the Swapna Avastha is mithya because there is not sufficient time nor sufficient space to accommodate the events in the dream. I hope you remember the discussion on this, right? We said that the events of a dream cannot be accommodated in the body because of the lack of space, and also the dream time cannot be real because in the dream you can go through an entire lifetime, but the dream has lasted basically for what, 1 or 2 hours. So it is easy to accept that dream world is mithya because of the lack of sufficient space and time. But how does Gaudapada say that Jagrat Prapancha is also mithya? Because Jagrat Prapancha has got sufficient time and sufficient space. What is the answer? So we go to the next Karika. Karika number 5. We will read. Swapna Jagrati Sthane
स्वप्न जागृत स्थाने
एकम् आहुर्मनीषिणः
एकम् आहुर्मनीषिणः
वेदानामि समत्वेन
वेदानां समत्वेन
प्रसिद्धेनैव हेतुना.
प्रसिद्धेनैव हेतुना.
So he says Swapna Jagarita Sthane. In the dream avastha as well as in the Jagrata avastha, Ekam Ahuhu Manishinaha. Manishinaha Ahu. What is Manishinaha?
Wise person or one who knows.
Wise person, right? You remember that we have done the text called Manisha
Yes.
Panchaka. So
Yes.
Manishinaha is a wise person. Manishina Ahu, the wise person say that Swapna Jagrita Sthane, that the Swapna Avastha and the Dream Avastha, Ekam Hi. They are only one. They are identical. They are very similar. And ekam in what respect? Both are mithya. So that is not stated, that we have to pull from the previous verses. We have said that dream universe and Jagrata universe are both mithya. So wise person, when he says both are only one, that ekam, that oneness is what? The oneness is the mithya part. Both are mithya one. Okay. Why do they say that? So he says, Vedanam hi samatvena. Samatvam means similarity. Vedanam is, as I said earlier, Veda refers to different objects. He says, because the objects are very similar in both cases. Veda has to be taken as distinct entities, distinct objects. Right? In both the avasthas, dream avastha and Jagrata avastha, three things exist. Time exists, that is, kalaha exists, deshaha, space exists, and varieties of objects, vastu exists. So kala, desha, vastu, veda is there in the avasthas. In which avasthas? Both Jagrat and Swapna avastha. And the wise people say that both are mithya because they are identical. Now, as I said earlier, it is easy to accept that the dream is mithya. The dream world is mithya, I can accept because there is a clear lack of sufficient space for the dream elephant to be there in my head, right? Or the dream mountain to be there in my head. There is a clear lack of sufficient time for me to have gone to the moon and come back. All of which can happen in the dream avastha. So it's not very difficult for me to accept that dream avastha is mithya. But Jagrata avastha is certainly not having a confinement of time and space. Therefore, how do I accept it as mithya? Right? So Gaudapada says here in reply, what does he say? He says, Prasiddhe naiva hetuna. Prasiddheva naiva hetuna means hetu. The various reasons are prasiddha. Prasiddha means well known. So Gaudapada says there are well known reasons why you have to accept that Jagrata Avastha is also mithya. And these well-known reasons are known to whom? To people who have studied Vedanta, people who are experts in the Shastra. So, what are the reasons? There are two reasons, or two major reasons. One reason Gaudapada will himself give in the next Karika. One reason is given by Shankaracharya in his Bhashyam on this Karika. Right? So that reason is not mentioned by Gaudapada. It is given by Shankaracharya. So Shankaracharya says Jagrat Prapancha is mithya because you are experiencing it. What does he mean? It's a
Acharya, I didn't
very,
hear.
very fundamental Vedantic point.
I didn't hear Acharya the sentence that you said.
This
Shankaracharya says.
Shankaracharya says that Jagrat Prapancha is mithya because you are experiencing it.
Okay.
Because the
Anything.
experienced is different from the experiencer. Because it is the scene.
It is the scene. So you can have a vyapti, a generalization from this particular point of Shankaracharya's. What is that? Yad yad drishyam tat tat mithya. Whatever you can experience, that is mithya. And what is satyam? So Shankara's idea is that whatever is existing but not experienced, that is satyam. And what exists but is never experienced, you the experiencer, the subject. So If you remember Drik, Drishya Vivekaha, all Drik, all the one Drik, the experiencer, the seer alone is Satyam. All Drishyam, all objects of experience is Mithya. What is the reason why Shankara says this? Now, it's a very, valid point, but we need to think about it a bit before we can understand. Shankara says, that the existence of an object does not depend upon the object at all. For example, I have a cell phone, right? So Shankara says the existence of that cell phone does not depend upon the cell phone. Who will say that this is a cell phone?
The one who's seeing it or using it.
One who's seeing it will say, right? And therefore, it's a very subtle point. The existence of any object depends upon the subject. The proof that any object exists is the fact that the subject says it exists. How do you explain this further? You can actually generalize a statement. Any object exists only. So I'll be careful about the wording so that you can understand. Any object can be said to exist only if it can be experienced by some person at some time, either present or future or past. Some person has to experience. Then only you can say the subject exists, the object exists.
This dependent existence, it depends upon pramata.
Depends upon pramata. But what is actually being said is that the existence of any object depends upon that capability of that object to be known. And the capability of an object to be known depends upon the pramata, the knower, and therefore the existence of any object depends upon the pramata. Object has a dependent existence depending on the subject, whereas the subject's existence does not depend upon the object. This is the logic, and we all know the definition of mithya. Whatever is dependent existence, whatever is having dependent existence is mithya only. So I want you to think about that statement. If an object is capable of being known or has been known in the past or is known in the present or will be or is capable of being known in the future by some person or the other, then only that object can be said to exist. What is the corollary from there? If there is an object, let us say there is an object which has not been known in the past by anyone, is not known today by anyone, and does not have the capacity or the potential to be known in future by anyone, can somebody talk about that object? No. And therefore, that object cannot be said to exist. Why is this so important? Because our common thinking is that existence of something is absolute, right? I live some cell phone in my room. Even if I'm not there, I know the cell phone is there. Therefore, I can say the cell phone exists. How will you apply the logic of our discussion to that?
Somebody else could see it over there, or it
Somebody
has
else
the
can see it.
capability of being seen by someone else
Correct. But you have also
was
seen it in the
seen by
past.
me in the past.
You have seen it in
or
the
past.
past.
Yes.
Somebody can see it today and somebody else can see it tomorrow. Right? Now, if there is an object somewhere which you have not seen, nobody has seen, nobody has a potential to see, the capacity to see, then nobody can ever talk about the existence of that object. So that is the main idea here. Unless there is an existence which is revealed by someone, something cannot said to exist. Right? And therefore, Swapana Prapancha is experienced. Jagrata Prapancha is experienced. Whatever is experienced has existence. The only thing is, since that existence is dependent upon the pramata, it is dependent existence. Therefore, the Swapna Prapancha is Drishyam, but is dependent Drishyam. It is Mithya. Jagrat Prapancha is Drishyam, is dependent Drishyam. Both are dependent upon the pramata, the consciousness principle for their existence. And therefore, both the Jagrata universe as well as the Swapna universe, both are mithya only. This is a logic given by Shankara in his comment. Any questions?
Om
Is there
Acharya.
any doubt at all?
Om Acharya.
Yes,
So I'm
madam.
following the discussion correctly. We are saying that anything which requires a conscious observer for existence is mithya,
Yes.
and the only thing which is not dependent on a conscious observer for existence is the satyam.
Is
That's
the
what
observer himself.
the observer himself. So it's also like when they talk in quantum physics, that Schrodinger's cat. It's
Yes. Schrodinger's cat. He is dead or alive. Schrodinger's cat is both dead and alive until such time as the observation is done.
So yeah, his theory was kind of to say that um, consciousness does not, existence does not require a conscious observer. That was the purpose of that experiment also.
Yes. That's the purpose of experiment. So it's more of a, I don't think it really proved that. In fact, proved the other way around.
I think he was just trying to disprove the common belief of that time that the early theories of quantum physics, which said that existence requires a conscious observer. So
In
he was
fact,
just
quantum physics also says even today that the act of observation changes the event.
But I mean, it keeps evolving. So
That is
because
what Schrodinger's cat's theory was about. The act of observation, fructifies whether the cat is dead or alive. Until that you actually observe, in terms of probability, the cat is 50% alive and 50% dead.
right, then there were later theories which said like this quantum entanglement theory, which is the recent.
Yeah, so that's different. That you can at long spaces also,
Mm.
far away from each other also, two what you call atoms or two particles. You know what the theory is, right? If some particle is spinning in one direction, if they are paired particles, that second particle will also be spinning the same direction, even though they are millions of miles apart. I mean, all these things really don't contribute to the discussion, actually.
Right.
Okay. So the idea is to know for sure, to understand for sure that everything that you can see, experience, perceive is dependent upon you. For as the existence itself is dependent upon you. That is why you're saying it exists. And therefore it is mithya. Okay. Now we look at what Gaudapada himself says. So we look at the sixth Karika. We will check. Adavante chayannasti
आदावन्ते च यन्नास्ति
यन्नास्ति
vartamanepi tatthatha
वर्तमानेऽपि
वर्तमानेऽपि
तत्तथा
तथा
vitathai sadasha santaha
वित्तैः
वित्तदृशा सन्तः
vitathai sadasha santaha
वितत्
वित्तथैः
वितथैः
सदृशा
सदृशा
सन्तः
सन्तः
avitatha iva lakshitaha.
अवितथा
अवितथा
अवितता
इव
इव
लक्षिताः
लक्षिताः.
So they say that if you chant enough Sanskrit, your tongue becomes more flexible. So vitathai, so clarity of the speech comes through Sanskrit, it is said. Because everywhere there are words which are tongue twisters. So he says, Adavante. So that word has to be broken up. Can anybody tell me how the word will break up? No. Okay. Adau,
Adi Avante.
not Adi. Adau Ante. Which means what? Adau, beginning. Ante, end. Right? It is Adau because there are two things. Adi and Ante. And Sanskrit grammar, it is double. So therefore, the dual cases here. Adau Ante, in the beginning and the end, yat yan nasti, yat nasti. So you have to say yat adau ante nasti. That which does not exist. Adau in the beginning, ante in the end. Vartamanepi tat tatha. The similar status is there. Vartamanam also, in the middle also, in the beginning also, in the present also, which is in the middle. So that which did not exist in the beginning or at the end does not exist in the middle also. That which has no past and no future cannot have a present also. Adavante yat nasti vartamanepi tat tatha. And therefore, vitathai sadrisha santaha. Remember, vitathai is mithya. Sadrisha means having similar features identical to. Santaha is. Vitathai sadrisha santaha. Even though they are identical to mithya, avitatha eva lakshitaha. Avitatha is not vaitatyam, not mithya. Therefore, satyam. So, satyam eva lakshitaha. Even though these objects which have no beginning and no end, and therefore they are not existing in the middle also, and even though it is very clear that they are identical to mithya objects, even then the non-discriminate person, avitatha lakshitaha, regards them as not mithya, as satyam. Very nice way of explaining. So, he's saying that any object which is finite has a date of birth and a date of expiry, which means there is a limited duration of existence. Therefore, when you say, a pot is anityam, It means before the creation of the pot, it did not exist. And after the destruction of the pot, it will not exist. What will exist before creation, after destruction?
The clay.
Clay.
The clay alone, right? And therefore, the Namarupa pot, it enjoys an existence which is got a limitation in time. And therefore, to apply the Vedantic laws, if an object appears and disappears, it means that existence is not its intrinsic nature. What is the definition of Satyam?
Trikale tishtati.
Trikale
three.
apitishtati. Exists in all the 3 periods of time. And therefore, this pot or this object which comes and goes, which has a beginning and has an end, really speaking, it doesn't exist in all 3 periods of time. Therefore, it is not Satyam, which means that the existence which the pot is showing is not intrinsic existence. It is incidental property, borrowed existence. Right? Just as the heat in the water is borrowed. Similarly, this pot has borrowed existence from whom?
The clay.
Sorry, Acharya, fire. You meant that. I lost the thought.
Pot has borrowed existence from whom?
From
Clay.
clay. Clay.
Clay.
Yeah.
Therefore, clay lends existence to pot when the pot form comes, and when the pot form is destroyed, the existence, so-called existence, goes back to the clay or reverts back to the clay. So when you say pot is, remember the isness of the pot really belongs to the clay. Pot does not have existence of its own. Even though you're holding the pot, even though you fill water in the pot, even though the pot is available for transactions, the existence does not belong to the pot. It belongs to the clay alone. And this world, says Gaudapada, is also like the pot. Before creation, the world did not exist. After Pralayam, the world did not exist. In between also, we can say that the world exists. But Gaudapada says what? Vartamanepi yannasti. World doesn't really exist. In between also. Why does he say that? Because it has no independent existence of its own. The existence is borrowed from Brahman only. That alone is Satyam. The world has temporary seeming existence. It is Mithya only. But the indiscriminate person, avithatha eva laksitaha, for him, the world seems to be Satyam. Okay. Now we look at Karika number 7. We'll give another viewpoint. Saprayojanata tesham
Saprayojanata
Prayojanatatesham
swapne vipratipadhyate
Swapne
swapne
vidyate
pratyate
tasmat abhyantavatvena
tasmat
Tasmadadhyatvatvena
adantvatvena
tasmat abhyantavatvena.
tasmat
Tasmadadhyatvatvena
adantvatvena.
You have to Read the word carefully. Tasmat adhyantavatvena.
तस्मात्
Tasmat
आद्यन्तवत्वेन
adhyantavatvena
Mithaiva khalu te smritaha.
मिथ्यैव
mityaiva
खलु
khalu
ते
te
स्मृताः
smritaha.
So now he talks about utility, prayojanam. So tesham saprayojanata. Utility of the objects in your dream, swapne vipratipadyate, is contradicted in the dream. Tasmat, therefore, adhyanta vatvena, adi antavatvena, because they have beginning and end, te spritaha, they are considered mithaiva khaluhu, really mithya only. Right? So he is referring to our general understanding that swapna prapancha objects, dream objects are mithya. What is the reason? Their prayojanata, their utility is contradicted when you wake up. Your dream bank balance cannot buy you even a lollipop in the Jagrada Avastha, right? So again I'm saying, from the viewpoint of the waker, the dream bank balance is mithya. But you cannot make that statement from the viewpoint of the Taijasa, right? From the viewpoint of Taijasa, remember that the Jagrat Prapancha has no utility. The money you have in your bank balance, in your bank account, in the bank, in Jagrat Avastha, it cannot be used by the dreamer to purchase anything. The water you have in your fridge in Jagrat Avastha will not be available to the dreamer to quench his thirst. Right? Now, this is what the Purvapakshi is saying. He is saying that you said what? That Jagrat Prapancha Vitatha, that the Jagrat Avastha is mithya because it is anityam, just like the Swapna Prapancha. Swapna Prapancha comes and goes, therefore it is mithya. But Jagrat Prapancha also comes and goes, therefore it is mithya. That is what we said. And the Purvapakshi objects. He says that your statement that Swapna Prapancha is mithya in the same way that Jagrata Prapancha is also mithya because they have a beginning and end. That is what we said earlier. That is not really logical because he says all objects in the Jagrata Avastha have got a utility. Shankara gives the example of food and water. He says they are useful for removing hunger and thirst. Right? And therefore, while this is not seen in the objects of Swapna Avastha, Purvapakshi is saying that your objects in Jagrata Avastha have got utility. Right? They can be used to, you can use the money in your bank to buy things. You can use the food in your fridge to eat and quench your hunger. But this is not seen in the case of Swapna Avastha. And therefore, Purvapakshi is saying that in deciding what is mithya and what is not, don't look at whether they have got a beginning and an end. But look at prayojana. Is there any utility at all? Do you see the, what you call, flaw in that Purvapakshi's argument? Anybody? What is the flaw in the utility argument?
Standpoint that he's talking from.
You have to be very, when you say something, please explain in
So
full sentences.
when he says that there is no utility, there is no utility in the dream state, he's speaking from the standpoint of the waker. But
Okay.
for the dreamer, there will be utility of those objects in the dream, as we would presume. But when we are saying that there is utility from the standpoint of a waker, there also he's taking the standpoint of a waker directly to say there is utility for the waker, but he's not taking the standpoint of the Turiam.
Very good. So in his comparison, this is the flaw, that in one case, the standard is the waker, and the other case, standard is the dreamer. And he has used that, but he has taken both from the standpoint of the waker only. He has not considered the standpoint of the dreamer at all. For the dreamer, the dream objects are very, very much useful. That's the flaw. So we'll do one more Karika and we'll stop. Karika number 8. Apuram sthani dharmo hi
Purvam sthani
Apurvam
Purvanstani
sthani
dharmo
dharmo
hi
hi
yatha swarga nivasinam
yatha
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 swarga
swargini
swarga
vasinam
nivasinam
tanayam prekshate gatva
pranayam
tanayam
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 prakshite
gatva
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 yathaiveha sushishitaha
yathaive
yathaiveha
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 sushishtaha
sushishtaha
sushishtaha.
So apurva sthani dharmo hi. Right? Apurva is not seen before, which is uniqueness. So apurvam, the uniqueness of an object, sthani dharmo is the attribute of the observer, he says. Right? And he gives an example. Yatha swarga nivasinam. Like in the case of people who live in heaven, swarga nivasis. And gatva. If you go there to swarga, tanayam prekshate, you experience them just as a well-informed person. Person experiences anything in this world. If you go to Swarga, he says, you experience the people in Swarga just like you experience people here. And therefore, unique objects are dependent on the observer. That is being what is said. As what is being said here, the objects in Swarga are dependent upon the observers of the objects in Swarga. Who are they? Swarga Nivasina. So any object in Swarga can be perceived only by people who live in Swarga. And therefore he says the Apuram Sthani Dharmohi. Uniqueness of an object is the attribute of the observer only. Right? So Gaudapada is actually saying that just as the unique objects of heaven are dependent on the observation by the people who reside in heaven. That is the first part. What is the second part? In the similar manner, the unique objects of the dream are dependent on the dream observer. Right? So here he is saying whether the objects are unique or not, it doesn't matter. What is important is the dependence. Any object which is dependent on the observer is mithya. Right? And we said earlier, something which is observable by us, or has been observed by us in the past, or is being observed by us today, or is capable of being observed in the future, that alone we can accept as existing. But if an object is not capable of being observed by anybody at any time, then it is non-existent. And therefore, existence depends upon the observer. So he says, Yatha eva sushikshitaha. Just a sushiktaha is a learned person. Just as a sushiktaha, a learned person, yathaiva goes from one place to another. And what happens when he goes from place to place? He experiences unique things within this world itself. So the idea is that if you go here and there, depending on the place where you are, you will observe different types of objects. Some of them will have utility to you. Some of them will not have utility for you. Therefore, the fact that they have utility or not, they are all mithya. He's addressing the objection of the Purvapakshi who said that in Jagrada Avastha, the objects have utility. In Swapna Avastha, the objects do not have utility. Without talking about whether they have utility or not, now, we decided that for the Swapna observer, for the dreamer, the objects in Swapnavastha have utility. But Gaudapada says it doesn't matter whether the objects have utility or not. It doesn't matter at all. What is the criteria for Mithya? The criteria is whether they have dependent existence, whether or not they fulfill the definition Trikale Apisat. If they don't fulfill that definition, they are Mithya. So, utilizing the utility as the criterion for reality is not correct. The correct definition, whatever is not Nityam, whatever is Anityam, is Mithya. So, with this, we'll stop for today. Any questions? It's very heavy, right?
Last two objections were a little confusing, I think.
Yeah. So the objection, when you see on the face of it, it makes a lot of sense. If I can't utilize my bank balance of the dream in my Jagrata Avastha, it is mithya. And that is the way that I normally think also. And that is the objection that Purvapakshi raises. Gaudapada says, no, it doesn't matter. What matters is whether it comes and goes. Whether it is got a beginning and got an end. If it has, what is the idea? It doesn't fulfill the definition of Satyam. Trikale api tishtati. And therefore it is mithya. Gaudapada brings us back to the original definition of Tattvabodha. Trikale api sat iti mithya.
Right.
Whatever is available in all three time frames, they only are Satyam.
So, Acharya, just to clarify, we say that the dream objects have utility only for the dreamer, and the waking
Yes.
objects have utility only for the waker, not for the dreamer. So, since they, yeah,
And therefore, the normal conclusion is that as a
is that,
waker, for me, the dream is a mithya. We are not
yeah,
disputing the fact that they have no utility for you. What Gaudapada is saying, that is not the correct definition. The correct definition is whether they are Satyam or not. What is Satyam? Trikale api tishtati. And it's not Satyam because dream comes and goes. The world also comes and goes. Therefore, both are Mithya.
Right. And that heavenly experience thing also, could you simplify that, please?
The heavenly experience thing was an example that if the people in heaven, they have the objects of heaven, they have no utility to you over here. You can
Okay.
utilize those only when you go to heaven. So it is the prayojanam argument that is also mithya because You can't utilize them here in Jagrata Avastha. But Gaudapada is simply saying that doesn't matter. Don't take utility as the criteria at all. Stick
Right.
to the real criteria, which is, does it exist permanently or not?
Mhm. Got it.
Okay, with this we'll stop.
Right. Thank you.
Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate Om
Om
Shanti
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 Shanti.
Shanti.
Om Tat Sat, Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your
That's
patience.
Thank you. Thank you so
Vigachati.
much.